So, welcome to the Divershefy Inspiring Leaders podcast. Our guest today is Angelica Adamski. Angelica has significant experience as a board member of listed companies and also works with board members as an executive coach. So, how women directors can navigate the boardroom better is one of the questions most relevant for the audience of Divershefy that we will explore today, and together with other important insights Angelica will be sharing. So let me briefly give you a little bit of a background. Angelica Adamski is a senior executive with a long-standing track record of launching, scaling, and leading high-performance businesses across multinational organizations in the banking, mining, construction, telecommunication, and power sectors. With a deep understanding of complex global environments, she has repeatedly driven enterprise transformation by forging strong partnerships with stakeholders, customers, and employees, delivering sustainable improvements tightly aligned with mission-critical business goals. Her background includes senior representative roles at two international banks, including Societe Generale, as well as executive positions with Scandvik, Scandina, Siemens, and a National Export Credit Corporation. Angelica's global career spans all continents, strengthening her cultural fluency and her ability to build bridges between diverse teams in complex international environments. In parallel with her executive work, she's actively engaged in board governance and currently serves on several boards where she supports strategic direction, oversight, and sustainable growth, often at the intersection of transformation, leadership, and innovation. She also contributes to innovation ecosystems in the tech sector, advising and supporting organizations navigating change in fast-evolving markets. And outside of work, she nurtures her passions for art and yoga. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let me get started with a question on a more personal side. So you have experienced some major transitions in your career, then becoming an executive coach after many years of being an executive. Has this changed your definition of success compared to your earlier career?
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you for this beautiful introduction. It's hard to recognize yourself when you hear everything that you have done in life. So thank you for that. And yes, it was very interesting to transition into becoming an executive coach after having been an executive for so many years. And have I redefined the meaning of success? No, I don't think so. I think I had my higher purpose when I was an executive was to make a difference, to contribute to something that was becoming a little bit better. And I knew that the day that I was going to step down from my executive position, I wanted to become an executive coach. So that was really my mission. I had a coach myself, and I admired him so much. So I said, the day that I'm no longer an executive, I want to become an executive coach. So I think the meaning for success for me now is more, well, how can I contribute to others' successes? How can I be a tool so that other women and other people can succeed in the same way as I did when I was younger and when I was an executive?
So I think this is incredibly important that we all start to see more and more very senior leaders are willing to mentor and support younger generations, specifically also in my context with Divershefy, really wanting other women to mentor other women. And we are really privileged to have you as somebody who is actually doing that by being an executive coach. Thank you for extending your hand to other women. So, you often emphasized approaching setbacks with curiosity rather than judgment. How can a high stakes CEO train themselves to stay curious during a crisis?
That's also a very good question. Well, how, when everything is falling down over you and there's a big crisis, and a big crisis in your business might be perceived as a big crisis in society. So that might be how you see it. And I would say it's a question of using your brain. Your brain is a fantastic tool. And it's a question of telling your brain, well, this is an opportunity for me to learn something. This is an opportunity for me to see things from a different perspective. And I very often use the metaphor of a six, the number six.
Mm-hmm.
If I look at the number six and you standing in front of me, you see a number nine. And that is actually what's so interesting, that we see things from so different perspectives. But to discover that, we need to be a little bit more curious. So I would say when you come into a big crisis, ask yourself, instead of saying, this is horrible and I've done something wrong or something else has done something wrong, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I be a bit more curious in this situation? And you might not believe it the first time, but your brain, you can actually fool your brain into believing it. And in the end, you do believe it. This is interesting. What can I learn? That is really the
Yeah,
fascinating
it's
part.
very interesting because what I found also as a founder of Divershefy is that sometimes when I see crises, other people don't necessarily see crisis, they see opportunity for change, right? So I had to train myself also to look at certain situations as, okay, how can I pivot or how can I change something that makes this actually a positive move rather than something that I think I failed or I misjudged or something. It's actually something you can leverage into a new era. And that is, I think, very much what you're talking about.
Definitely what I'm talking about. And I mean, all change, all transitions, and all innovation is really coming from that we're doing something that is not working. And we perceive it as a crisis. And then we take a step back and we innovate something new. So a lot of opportunities are coming from crisis.
That's very true. I fully agree. So, my next question is about board roles. And in your own experience, um, women, when you coach women, what are the important insights on how to successfully navigate the boardroom? You are on boards yourself, and you also coach women on boards, right? So, is there anything different? Do you feel there's a difference between men and women, how they navigate the boardroom?
Yes, I think it is. Most people say no, there's no difference. And there's absolutely no difference in how competent we are. A woman wouldn't be on a board if she was not highly competent, even
Yes.
sometimes even more competent than men. But I would say that for me, having worked in extremely male-oriented industries, I worked in the mining field, I worked in the power field, so I worked mostly with men. And it took me some time before I understood that I needed to listen more than I needed to show my own knowledge. I needed to have the patience to listen to what everyone had to say before I said something myself. And that was a transition for me because I thought I was there really to show how good I was and how much I could contribute with. And before I'd learned that, I struggled a bit with patience in the meetings, patience in, well, how do you take decisions in a board? How do you navigate the whole team dynamic? Because this is a team that is not, it's a bit of an artificial team in a board. They
Mhm.
actually are put together because they are extreme experts in their fields, not because they are such a good team and you're building a team. So it took a little bit of time before I could navigate that. But I think that listening was really the most important thing that I could bring with. And with that comes patience. You need
And
patience
is
to listen.
and is that also what you find when you talk with the women you're coaching?
Yes, yes, absolutely what it is. And I very often coach women on both on very diverse boards, but not only diverse from the gender perspective, also very diverse from cultural perspectives. And then
Yes,
the listening and the communication, the way that we are communicating becomes even more important.
absolutely, I agree. I mean, this multicultural environment, we have another question for the later, but that is another big challenge. So, how can leaders create a secure pace that encourages taking risks while maintaining a high performance culture? So, this question is more in relationship to your own experience of being in large corporates. How do you create that secure pace for people to be willing to take risks?
This is very interesting, Sylvia, and this is a topic that is very close to my heart. How do you create the psychological safety that we call the secure base so that people really can dare to make mistakes, take
Yeah.
risks? And with taking risks, you can also make mistakes. And how can it be okay to make mistakes? Because that is really how we learn. That is how we all learn, how we all become better by making mistakes. And we have to make them ourselves, sadly enough. No one else can tell us what it is to make a mistake. And I would say that it's a question of building trust. And that is a very broad concept, of course. How do you build trust? Well, you show a bit of yourself. You are a bit more authentic, and you show that there is a human being behind you as a leader. So you share something a little bit more personal.
Mm.
You encourage everyone to share a little bit more about themselves. That does not mean you need to be friends. This does not even mean you need to like each other. It's just
Mhm.
that you create a respect, a very high level of respect. And with that respect comes the trust that is so needed for people to dare actually to step out of what they ordinarily do and try new things, because that is really how a team is growing and the company is growing with that.
Right. Interesting. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree. So you describe your coaching style also as utilizing both heads and hearts, right? How can a traditional data-driven executive start integrating a more emotional intelligence without losing their edge? I mean, what is it that makes somebody who is like, for example, in an IT industry or somebody who's working with AI and computers all the day, but still, in terms of leadership, you need some emotional intelligence, and that is not so easy to come by.
No, you're absolutely right. And I will actually share an example. And I've got the permission to share this example. I've coached a young lady. She's a top executive in one of the pharma companies. She's an IT person. She's responsible for the IT side. And she's running a big IT project for this global pharma company. She's extremely skilled, an extremely intelligent young woman. And yes, with that, she does not always feel comfortable interacting, communicating, influencing in the organization. So when we started her transition into leading more with her heart, uh, we had actually to look, well, what could she do as a first step to go out of a comfort zone? How could she see the person that was in front of her? And with seeing the person that was in front of her, acknowledging that I've got another human being sitting here on the other side of the table or of the screen. How do I communicate with this person so this person understands where I'm coming from? and that I'm coming with a good intent. So we changed a little bit in her language to start with. And with that also, how did she keep her posture? How did she look the person in the eyes? How did she radiate more of goodwill, of wanting well in the meetings where she felt she had gone wrong previously? And we started very small. So she felt very much out of her comfort zone doing this. So we started very small by looking, well, what could you practice today? Who are you meeting today? What could you do differently today? And in the end, when she had actually done this for almost a year, it became something so powerful. So she implemented her big IT project that was crucial for this company in a way that has never been seen before. So she went from being this very introvert person, not to becoming an extrovert, of course, but to using the heart a little bit more in a way that felt comfortable for her. And people could
Right.
see the shift in energy, which was absolutely beautiful.
So you actually, this is an example you brought. And so for the audience listening today, what would be like such a shift that they could implement?
I think if they could start with reflecting on, well, what could they do differently? What is not working today? Where do they feel there's a gap when they are communicating? Because this is very often, leading with the heart is very often in the communication. So if they reflect upon, well, what would I like in my leadership style to work better? And then they actually try something very small. And even
Mm.
if it's just to look straight into another person's eyes or just smile towards another person, that is the start of a shift.
Oh, interesting. Can be as small as a little smile or little eye contact, huh? That's
Yes,
interesting.
yes.
Great. So now moving on to the multicultural experience that you have worked in nearly every continent, so you know a lot of different cultures. So what are common leadership mistakes you see that specifically Westerners make when they come to emerging markets? And obviously, I've lived in Europe, I've lived in the US, I'm living in India. So I have some experience of that myself, and I'm really curious about your experience of that.
That is also a very interesting part that I think that Western executives, they come out with a view, well, here I am, what I'm doing is the right thing. I'm sent out by my company to make a difference, and this is how we're doing it. And they forget that they are in a completely different work context, and they forget to listen. I think, again, we've got one mouth and two ears because it's better to listen first and talk thereafter in most contexts. And I think that is really the the sensitivity you have when you're coming into a new market. And you're quite
Mhm.
right. And as you know, Sylvia, I've got a very similar background to yours. I lived in Africa for the last 30 years. I lived in Europe for many years. I lived in Russia. I lived in the United States. And I worked a lot in most actually areas. But there's actually one thing that we all have in common, no matter what culture we've got, and that is that we want to feel safe, we want to feel seen and heard, and we want to feel that we are contributing to something. We want to have a higher purpose. That's again how the human brain is geared, and how we can actually, what we can leverage from when it comes to leadership. It's really to make people seen and heard.
Mm.
And with that also going into, well, what's important for you? From what perspective are you seeing things? And
Mm.
when we're doing this, it makes a difference. So I think it's a question of, well, don't believe that everything you know is the right way of doing things. There are other ways of doing things. People in other cultures might see things from a completely different perspective. Again, the six and the nine. We see things from different perspectives, and they're all very valid. It's all very well valid. So how can you be a bit more humble when you're
Mhm.
coming into a new culture? And I think this is a two-way street, because this is also when we are going into board assignments. So if you're new in a board and you are in a multinational board, so you're working actually for a multinational company and you have a board assignment for a global company, it's a question of, well, my truth is my truth. And it's very interesting to listen to, well, how do other people see it from their perspective? What,
Right.
again, what can you learn from this? How can you be more curious? And how can you use your curiosity really to your advantage here?
That's a theme. So that's something, the curiosity and the listening is really one of the key things that you would recommend to any of your coaches or any of the people listening today.
Yes, it
Thank
is.
you. One last question I have is in terms of turnarounds, because you have led successful turnarounds like Chroma Flora. What is a culture fix when you come into a company that you're looking to implement first? Because there's always, there's always a reason that the turnaround needs to happen, right? And my guess is a lot has to do with the culture in the company. So what is a cultural fix that you suggest when a company is stalling?
I think again, Sylvia, and this is very interesting because you're quite right. If you're going into a turnaround project, and it doesn't need to be a turnaround even. I mean, all companies need to develop to be relevant today. So something needs to happen in a company for the company to stay relevant. And I think the first thing that needs to happen is, well, what has been done has been done. So there's no use crying or blaming someone for the past. It is what it is.
Mhm.
So thank the past and say goodbye. But acknowledge that most people that were there in the past, they are still there. And you need really for them to see, well, they did their best, most probably under the circumstances. So don't come in with a blame culture,
Mm.
but instead say thank you to the past, close the door, and look forward. Create the forward-looking culture. We are going towards something. We're not going from something, but we're truly looking forward to a better future. And that also gives hope. And I think hope is something that we all need in today's culture. I think when we've done researches at the business schools that I'm coaching for, we have seen that hope is what is mostly lacking in today's leadership. And that is really what people need in today's world, some sort of hope looking forward. And I think when you look forward, you can also create the hope that we are all here to create a better world and something that is becoming better.
Wonderful. I think this is a perfect ending for our conversation today. Thank you so much for joining us, Angelica. And um, anybody who is listening to this podcast, please reach out to Angelica on LinkedIn. I'm sure she's happy to connect with you. And stay tuned for the next session on the Divershefy Inspiring Leaders podcast. Thank you for joining us today, Angelica.
Thank you, Sylvia, and thank you for the important work that you are doing.
Thank you.